Okay, I think it's a couple of minutes past now, so we'll get into it. So once again, thanks for the time. Thanks for joining. Excited to have you with us today. What we're going to be talking about this morning is our view um, of the role that offensive security plays in both our overall security posture and indeed in the endpoint detection and response scenario, where we take an adversary-driven or offensive-driven response and can provide, as part of what we do, health checks for real-world defense. And we'll talk about why that's important and also what we mean by it and our approach as we go. It's an exciting topic, as we know, with the market moving towards what we're doing, categories from Gartner such as CTEM and AEM, and many compliance standards starting to require the testing of your attack surface, whether that's Tiber or Dora, and so forth. So we'll get into it. First thing I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about who we are, who your presenters are this morning, and you can understand the background and also a little bit about why we're here. So I'm the VP of EMEA over at Horizon 3. We have a big and growing organization in EMEA, actually. I think we're about 270 people worldwide, but in EMEA, something like 50 people all in. So it's a region that's growing fast for us, and we'll explain why that is. I joined from a background primarily in defensive security. So prior to this, I was the VP of Northern Europe at SentinelOne, both pre and post IPO. And prior to that, I was running Western Europe, Palo Alto. Spent about 4 years at Palo Alto Networks. That was growing rapidly. And also tenure at places such as IBM and Oracle, Sun, and a couple of exits to my name as well. So 25 years plus in cyber, started as an engineer, and I've been in regional leadership for some time. Love the technology. The reason I jumped across was having spent time in defensive, was very, very excited to see how an offensive capability can really change the dynamic and equip our customers with the ability to reverse the map and look at an attacker's perspective on the defensive posture. Fred joined relatively recently, actually. Fred was also over at Palo Alto. He was running the Cortex pre-sales engineering team over at Palo across EMEA, and a sizable team, so has a lot of endpoint experience as well as a vast cyber platform and similar 20, 25 years of experience. So that's who we are. I'm going to start with some numbers. The reason I start with numbers is because we all like numbers, and numbers tell a story of themselves. I'm not going to tell you what these are straight away. I'm going to let you think about them, and I'll touch on them as we go through the presentation. But the numbers are going to tell you a story that I think you'll find quite surprising, and in some cases quite alarming. The performance and the advantage that we give our clients over humans is something that is quite remarkable. So this is a little bit of a quiz. See if you can screenshot this perhaps, and then take the answers down as we go through, and I'll tell you all of the answers at the end. But some numbers to noodle on as we go through. I put this slide in the other day as I was en route to another speech, and it's just an ad hoc slide, but I think it summarized the problem that we face really crisply. And I was on my way to, I think it was Barcelona, but I can't recall, and I was in Heathrow, and there was massive disruption. And it wasn't just Heathrow. Airports across the world were significantly disrupted by what actually was a supply chain attack to check-in and baggage handling systems. And that attack was nothing to do with British Airways, for example. However, I was on a plane eventually, and most of the passengers were quite cross about delays and inconvenience and being late for meetings, understandably, and they didn't care, they didn't know, it didn't matter that actually it was nothing to do with British Airways. It was, in fact, a lot to do with a supply chain attack that was outside their control. So all they heard from British Airways was excuses. They heard blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was a very telling comment on the state of cyber today, which is customers don't care. They'll switch their business. Your reputation will be damaged. the revenue, top line, markup, etc., will all suffer because ultimately they don't care about excuses, they care about impact. And British Airways had been quite sensible. They had an alternative supplier, and Terminal 5 indeed wasn't using this particular American check-in and baggage handling software. So they'd already had contingency plans in place. And that's part of what I think we're all facing, which is the responsibility to preserve business operations, to preserve reputation, to protect reputational damage, revenue, markup is on us all. But in an era where in Europe, spend last year was $13.2 billion on defensive cyber, on cybersecurity spending in Europe, 13.2 billion, and yet attacks were up 84%, tells us that something's not working. And that's why many of us have jumped over to an offensive cyber capability that I think is super important in terms of highlighting where our gaps are and how we can fix them. This slide tells you a little bit about where we're from. So it's quite an interesting company in many ways, not least in our technology, but also in a lot of the team. So the organization was created by Snehal and Tony P, the two founders, both of whom were at US Joint Special Operations Command. So one of the most demanding environments in the world. And both had been in big roles previously. Snehal had been CTO at Splunk, he'd been CIO at GE Capital, enormous roles. And as he likes to put it, he took a 97% pay cut to serve. Going across as the CIO of Joint Special Operations Command, he wanted an attacker's perspective to know that that very demanding environment was secure before he was attacked. And that is where we are from. That is the background to the capability that was developed and the capability that we put in the hands of clients every day. And about 35% of the team of Horizon 3 people are ex-agency, three-letter acronym agency, intelligence, and so forth, and our nation-state level attack team people who create very, very advanced content that we put in the hands of our customers and partners. So Spec Ops background is where we're from, and it's a capability that we deliver. I'm sure you're all inundated with AI messaging every day, and cyber's certainly no stranger to AI messaging. Let me talk a little bit about why some of that's important, some of it's noise. You'll have seen probably reports of people like Anthropic and others stating that their company tools have been already being leveraged by attackers. And some of that is in very smart ways, and some of it's in quite basic ways, but some of it's in very smart ways, such as ransomware using AI to rewrite itself as it goes to avoid detection, signature detection, and other technologies to block it. So it changes itself as it goes to avoid detection. Anthropic's already said this. And there are other capabilities on the market where we have major concerns, such as Villager, which is an open source pen test AI tool from the Chinese that's on the Python marketplace, for example, 12,000 downloads so far, with a lot of experts talking about where that data is going and how that data is actually then potentially misused in itself. So AI tooling being leveraged already, and what we're seeing is a pace of change from attackers that defenders are not keeping up with traditional methods of defense. This slide talks a little bit, and for me it's quite important that we understand this type of the problem that I see and that I hear when I'm talking to CISOs and CIOs weekly, right? Which is a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of cyber teams have a little bit of perceptual blindness, and it's built in. I don't know if any of you have heard of the monkey business illusion, but that is an experiment that was in the 80s. It was a psychological experiment. It's quite simple. And it showed that if you give people or teams a task to say, count this thing, such as tickets to a game, they will miss something very, very obvious over there where they've not been told to look. And what I mean by that is somebody told to count tickets to a football match, somebody runs through the audience in a monkey suit, hence the name, they won't see that person running through the audience because they're very focused over there. And that's our concern. And that's what we see in businesses. And they agree. Focus on KPIs, focus on compliance standards, focus on basics such as MTTI, MTTD, time to fix, SOC triage, SOC alerts dealt with, and so forth. Or worse still, vulnerability lists, is you're missing the obvious. So we ask, how do you assess your entire attack surface? How do you assess your EDR across what may be a vast estate, maybe a small estate, but thousands of endpoints, if you're tracking the wrong KPIs or you're just looking at those? And what we say is give the attacker's perspective to our clients, put it in their hands, and don't tell me I'm secure. I've got to the bottom of my top 20% vulnerabilities, or our MTTR has come down by X, but show me, give me the proof, give me the prioritization, and keep showing me in a continuous manner. Because the value of testing is not in an annual pen test, it's in continual testing, weekly or monthly. So 80% of our customers test monthly, 42% test weekly. And that forms the basis of a continuous testing framework or continuous assurance framework. So let's talk a little bit about problems. Okay, so attackers have evolved. We've already said that they're leveraging AI. We know that we've got morphing attacks to prevent detection. And problem number one is many customers use a pen test that's manual, it's human. It might be third party, difficult to find, expensive, but it's infrequent. And not only that, a manual pen test is testing typically about 5% of your attack surface. I've got some stories coming up where we'll show how and why it's important to cover 100% of your attack surface. So how can it show you in 5% of your attack surface what your EDR is protecting if it's working across all of your estate? How to test it safely in production versus being breach attack simulation, which is largely irrelevant by its nature, it is simulation. And how to make sure that you're adapting your defense and validating that your EDR is working, configured and tuned properly, and indeed that investment, therefore, is giving you the return on investment that you think it should. Problem number two is my least favorite thing in the world. It's vulnerability management, vulnerability lists. Everybody's got it. In many cases, it's a requirement for certain compliance standards, but we call these guest lists. In effect, they are lists of vulnerabilities that you never get to the bottom of, but not really prioritized. That is quite terrifying in terms of its irrelevance. So circa 2% of vulnerabilities on the CV list were exploited in 2024, for example. 2%, 98% noise, a list that creates a lot of work, a lot of business, cyber business monkey illusion, i.e. you're looking over there, not over there, and doesn't really solve the exploitability problem, because vulnerable in your own environment is not necessarily exploitable. You need the context in your environment of what is exploitable, what the impact is, and what to fix first. And that is not vulnerability management. We call vulnerability management guessing from a checklist. In fact, I'd say it's even worse. You've got a checklist or you've got a long list, you apply some maths to it, which is vulnerability management and tuning, and it's a slightly less crappy list, but it's still a list, okay? So those dashboards and reports don't tell you what your EDR is solving, what it's blocking, and how useful it is. And in fact, it can be downright misleading, where I've seen certain solutions, won't mention, such as Qualys, for example, where a patch has been deployed, and Qualys says that patch has been deployed and that issue is solved, then the EDR in that environment blocked the patch deployment, but Qualys still said it was solved, deployed, and safe. And where we came in, exploited that weakness and showed the customer the proof of that exploit having defeated EDR in that environment. And they said, well, that can't be the case. Qualys says that was patched. And we showed them that it had indeed not been patched. So even worse is false data. So you'll see in this example, this is just a view that you get out of our dashboard, a very small piece of the view, that with an EDR specific EDR health check from what we do in terms of our autonomous pen testing platform, that the EDR health check will pick up where you have no EDR detected, where there is EDR, where we're unsuccessful in detecting either way, and so forth. And then we'll look at where we defeated it, how we defeated it, and how to solve that defeat. So stop guessing from a checklist. A little bit about the pen test infrastructure. So apologies for the format. Uploading these slides into this platform has slightly moved things around. But in essence, what we're saying here is the short version is deploying Node Zero. So it's a solution that you buy. It's an AI SaaS solution. So it's a simple VM from you that deploys an OVA file onto it, and very quickly it is set up to run. And you then control it. You control the test, frequency, scenario, operational optics, so what you want it to look for, and it's human by exception. It's not designed for you to need to interact. It will run, I'll explain why it runs safely, and it will check 100% of your attack surface. Kubernetes clusters, we're the only people that can test within Kubernetes clusters. Your cloud surface, your internal surface, endpoints, EDR, identities, and so forth. And as an example, it is about 50 times faster than humans in independent tests. What I mean by that is, if any of you have heard of the Orange Cyber Defense GOAD network, so the game of Active Directory, on hard, that will take a human about 12 to 14 hours to crack. We ran without human involvement, and we cracked it, we owned it in 14 minutes and 58 seconds. 14 minutes and 58 seconds versus 14 hours. So much, much faster with no human oversight. So we act as an APT, as an advanced persistent threat, but in a safe manner. We've spent $100 million making sure this runs in production in clients in a safe manner, in the most sensitive environments in the world. By the way, when I say safe, one of our biggest clients is the NSA, the US NSA. They do not mind us talking about them. They talked about us on stage at Black Hat this year. We do their defense industrial base security checking for them, and we have saved them on their own numbers $156 million so far. So significant fast reduction of risk and reduction of cost. Okay, so safe to run in production. We show you path. I'm going to show you all this proof, and we've got a demo shortly, and impact across data, credentials, and systems. We don't live in the system. So once you deploy us, we're in that OVA, but every test you spin up, we only exist in memory. We don't deploy agents, and we look for next best. The best analogy I can think of is Big Blue, for example, playing chess. You don't program every move. It's not scripted. It's making decisions. It's got a lot of data from millions of other chess games, and it's saying, okay, next best decision making, a Markov decision engine, AI underpinning what it does as it acts autonomously. So it is not scripted. And we've got huge anonymized learning data from over 177,000 pen tests, and more than any other people combined, that data. That is super, super useful in terms of training our AI and our decision engine, okay? As pen test finishes in your environment, and again, that doesn't leave your environment, it extracts itself and deletes itself. So there's nothing left from each individual pen test that you run, okay? All right, so let's look at how this actually looks. This is an example of attack path, and we'll go into a live demo, but this is an example of attack path. And as you can see on the left, Node Zero begins, and this is a real 14,000 host production environment, okay? And what we did went in was, one of the tests that they ran was EDR, validate EDR coverage. That's just one of the things we do. But EDR focused test, and out of 14,000, we found a number of misconfigured or non-deployed EDRs. And in one of those misconfigured EDR nodes, we managed to gain host access, and I'll talk about how that happened. We bypassed that EDR because we exploited a Java critical vulnerability, as you can see here. We deployed a rat as the second step very quickly, and across the top, when we show you this live, you'll see timestamps. So we deployed a remote access tool on that endpoint. We then managed to, from memory, dump the LSAS credentials and various other things that you can see on the screen to chain together exploits. We don't care about vulnerabilities. We're chaining together exploits in your environment, only relevant to you, that we have found next best. And having done that, we've become domain admin. Domain admin, you're toast. We own you. And we get domain admin a terrifying amount of times. Our average time to get domain admin in a client, for you to get domain admin because it's your test and it doesn't leave your environment, is 13 minutes. Think on that for a second. 13 minutes. Absolutely terrifying. But again, that's then your data. We show you how to fix it, and we test it's fixed. This is that same example, but another view from the EDR effectiveness console as you're running EDR testing. So in this environment, as you can see, mainly Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, some silence in there. And as you can see, we've got 2 instances. So the impact of that EDR circumvention is domain compromise 2, host compromise 16, and so on and so forth. We found 6 ransomware exposure issues and sensitive data exposure 8, okay? And that's from bypassing that EDR. In that environment, by the way, we'd followed a human team in, and that customer had suffered some issues from prior attacks. So we'd followed a human team in, and because a human team is so much slower, 14,000 hosts, because we're so fast and we cover everything, we're looking for the needle in the haystack that attackers want and need and look for. All right, thinking about the anatomy of that attack, what's the point? And I had a great conversation with Deputy CISO at a major global bank the other day. And she said to me, we know we need to do this. The problem is it's going to create more work. Number 1 concern. Number 2 concern was, what do we do once we've tested? What do we do with it? And the answer to both of those things was fairly straightforward using our tooling, because yes, you do need to do this. Absolutely. But it's not test, fire, and forget. It's not a manual tick box. It's you operationalize the outcome. You use it to tune your tooling, and you drive up the ROI of your existing cyber spend. So in that client, you test weekly. Then you get the head of EDR into a room, the head of the SOC into the same room. You get the head of threat into the same room. And you say, listen, why didn't EDR block the rat? Let's look. Here's the proof. What did it do? What logging can I use to improve my detection in the SOC? Why didn't the SOC shout about it? What can I do in the short term to reduce my exploitability? And by the way, as we go, should you choose to, across this attack path, we will drop tripwires behind us so that anyone following this attack path will set off alerts. So we'll drop tripwires behind us as a short-term band-aid while we show you how to fix it, and then we test it's fixed. Operationalize the outcome. So we always ask clients afterwards, say, what did you detect? What did you log? What did you alert on? And how did you stop it? So EDR, we know EDR really well. SentinelOne and Palo Alto, Fred, Palo Alto, and so on. We all know EDR really well. EDR is fantastic technology. It is the new perimeter in a way, but you've got to test it and validate it. And we defeat EDR about 35% of the time. So we defeat it 35% plus of the time, okay? And that's not because EDR is bad, it's because it may be in detect only mode, or it may be misconfigured, it may have default settings on. We show that to you, and we show you that with the proof. So the whole point of what we do is to execute safely in production. We map, by the way, against MITRE ATT&CK framework, so that you can look at it in that manner. We show you the downstream impact of those bypasses. We show you what we've strung together in the attack paths that you've seen. And then we find those blind spots before attackers do with forensic level evidence. So we say we find, we show you how to fix, and then we verify the fix, okay? So that's the idea. And again, this is a view from the console. I'm going to come back to those numbers because I actually would prefer to leave them till the end. So real result, I promise you some sort of war stories, real result. In testing, we found the bloop we uncovered, we got access to in the CAPT program with the NSA, with the Defense Industrial Base, the blueprints of nuclear submarine and destroyer, and a destroyer under 5 minutes in a test. Okay, so terrifying result, and that is human by exception, us running in an environment where we were asked to validate the deployed tooling, including EDR. That's the data we accessed. And again, didn't leave the customer, stays in the environment, it's in their console, they can see it and act upon it. But in that particular program, they're required to share their results with the NSA. Okay, we don't see them. All right, so going beyond just that premise, we talk about risk-based vulnerability management. And why is that important? So stitching your EDR story together, your identity testing that we do together, identity credentials, data, all of your attack surface and so forth. And we say, listen, we give you risk-based vulnerability management, not guessing from lists. So we say, we will show you the exploit and what we've done in the attack path. In that purple column, the second column from the left, you can then see, for example, in this environment, we have an active MQ OpenWire RCE. So we've exploited that. And that exploit is used in 2 ransomware exposures. So 2 ransomware exposures has involved that. The impact of that is loss of operational control, which you can, of course, dig into. And that is typically behavior and an exploit used that we see from Salt Typhoon, that is a Chinese Communist Party state-supported threat actor. And that might be relevant, particularly in retail, for example, or manufacturing. So you get a real view with a SAN key that shows exploit, downstream impact, business impact, and map to threat actor behavior. What I like to say about this is its context, prioritization. So say this exploit is used in, say, 30% of your attack paths. And if it's used in 30% of your attack paths, we say it's the most important exploit. Fix this first. This is how you fix it. One-click test that it's fixed and closed. Okay, so we give you context, exploitability, not vulnerability, we don't care. Prioritization and impact. So those things are very, very different from either manual pen testing or vulnerability. Okay, now I promise you the answers to some of these numbers at the end. So here we go. 35% of the time, I think you know that one, we defeat EDR and drop a RAP file. Our fastest domain compromise to date is 77 seconds. And again, that is not us hacking you. That's you buying and deploying the software, you testing yourselves. Okay, we've spent $100 million ensuring we're production safe. We've already covered we're 50 times faster than humans. With humans by exception, we think cyber is algorithm versus algorithm. 52 seconds is our fastest Microsoft Entra user compromise. We love Microsoft Entra. We destroy it all the time, and many of you are using it. Fastest credential compromise, 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and you can read the rest. By the way, average time to AWS compromise, 100 minutes. So you think you're on AWS, you're safe? You're not. And average domain compromise, which means you are toast, 13 minutes. Okay, so these are real world numbers. We're happy to show you the data behind them. So what we say is, listen, stop guessing what attackers will do. Start proving it and fixing it with find, fix, and verify. With that, I'm going to hand over to Fred. Thank you for your questions in the Q&A. We're going to put those at the end and make sure we got time to answer those as we go. So, Fred, for the technical demo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keith. Tim, 2 things that I would like to highlight on what Keith just said, because for me it's super important. First thing that we are providing to you the attacker view. Okay, what it means? It means that we are agentless, as Keith said, but that's really important for me to push that in details and push even more these things. We have no agent. As Keith said, if you would like to run an internal pen testing, we are able to set up an OVA internally. This OVA, VHD, sorry, that you could deploy internally, just need to have a few parameters like default gateway, be able to have access to our cloud environments, and IP address, and that's it. So basically what we are doing, we are acting exactly like an attacker. A hacker won't knock on your door to ask you to deploy any kind of agent, okay, or even to set up an appliances in your networks. That's not the case. Usually, if they are internal, they will plug to your network and try to sniff what's happened on your network to be able to collect credential and start to attack you, make the discovery. And from internet, they will use domain name and all this kind of stuff. This is exactly what we are doing. We are acting a little bit like a burglar, a nice one, which will go in your house, okay, do an inventory of everything that we are able to store in your house, provide you this report and tell you, if you would like to avoid this, this is where you should secure your door, your windows, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, this is exactly what we are doing. Second thing, which is also super important, we are not, of course, today we are speaking about EDR, but we are not focused on EDR. We are able to pen test all your environments at Kubernetes, as Keith said. Another thing is that we are not here to tell you that this endpoint solution is better than another one. It's not our goal. It's related to the life cycle of your tools. What I mean by that, I mean that imagine that you are a 2,000 employee company. You have a firewall. Certainly, you will receive a request to open a flow at a time on your firewall, open a generic rule during a certain amount of time. This rule has been open maybe for a week, and suddenly you need to extend for 2 weeks and for 3 weeks, and finally it becomes permanent. On the employee side, more user you have, worse it will be. Everybody claims something. I need to have access to this. I need to have access to that. So that's what creating misconfiguration on the endpoint, whatever will be the endpoint that you will deploy, okay? Because as soon as you are creating exception, you should face, exception should be removed at a time, but if you keep this exception in the system, which is usually the case, you will have breach on your network. Here you have our console. As you can see, this console rely on all the pen tests that we run. Okay, so here you have the full history of all the pen tests that we run on your network, on our network, our demo network, but usually it could be yours. Of course, today I will zoom on something which is a little bit specific, which is a sample EDR pen test. When you click on it, okay, you have an overview about the pen test here. The number of attackers. So here on blue, you will have the kind of group of hackers who are able to use this kind of attack to hack you. Here you have the attack techniques. And on the right side, what is the impact? If you take a look here, the number of impact is quite huge. 765, 531 weaknesses. We found more than 1,000 credentials. We found 4K data items and compromise 42 hosts. One thing which is important to understand that here, if we fix this impact, 328 host compromise, we fix almost 43% of this, which could be really good. If I take a look a little bit deeper on what we were able to achieve during this pen test, first of all, we were able to domain this domain name, which is example.net. So we found administrator password, admin2 password, and 8 other accounts. Same thing on POD04, example internal, 4 accounts plus the administrator domain. We were able to compromise also this one, which is the 10.0.229.1, okay? We were able to exploit this kind of compromise and exploit this CVE. And at the end, we found 17 hosts that we were able to compromise, and even worse, found 18 hosts which was sensitive to an attack which already report to the CISAKIEV, so mean public knowledge, public exploit already published on internet, and more than 600,000 files accessible without any kind of privilege, so mean anonymously. Okay, you have all the details here, which is quite critical with the MITRE attack framework here, all the credentials that we found, and we could have the details about it. And here you have the details of what was the node 0 and the time of the pen test that we ran. What I would like to take a zoom in is on the EDR side. If I click on the EDR side, you will see exactly like Keith showed to you earlier on, the number of endpoints. So it means that here we found 23 endpoints. There is 16 server or laptop who are deployed without any kind of endpoint in it. This 41 means that there is 40 OS where we are not able to identify if there is any endpoint installed on it. Could be, by example, iOS, Android, or whatever. On this endpoint side, we were able to identify 23 Microsoft Defender and 1 Sentinel-1. And here you have all the details about what we did through the Mitra attack, and here the attack impact. Just to give you a good overview about everything, I will click on the one where we have, by example, Sentinel-1, okay, here, and Microsoft. So when I click on it, here I see that we have a really, really bad picture, because when I take a look, we were able to bypass almost everything. Okay, even low attack has been permit, medium attack has been permit, and we have few critical which are there, with the details of it just there. One thing which is important for me is to highlight what is the weaknesses by priority. The first one here, which is this one, is related to something that normally all endpoints are well configured to block it, but not in this case, because if you take a look in it, what we were able to use, what we call here, an eternal blue. So we have eternal blue, and every time that you have something to click, so here, by example, we have the start with not zero. When I click on the exploit, you will know what not zero did, okay, with all the details, because it's good to say, but it's better to prove, and we are proving what we are saying. When we move to the next stage, which is here, the proof of exploit, we show that we were able to run the pen test. And if you take a look here, which is super important, you see the password. Of course, we are not an attacker tool, means that we are not here to provide you the password. That's why we hide the password here. And when you take a look on what we were able to do, we have access right on all the server that you are able to see here, which is really a big challenge. Another thing which is important, as we said, we were able to fix and verify. So here we have the proof. Okay, here we have the credentials that we found. Okay, administrator on the pod 12.example.internal, the threat actors with using it. Okay, the downstream impact, and here the fix action. Of course, at the fix action, we won't provide you how you should configure your endpoint to fix that. Means we won't rely on the configuration of Sentinel-1 or Microsoft Defender or Cortex XDR, CrowdStrike, or whatever it will be. It will take too many time for us to do it with any kind of different version. It won't work for us. We are providing to you what you should implement from the OS perspective to be able to fix that. And of course, if tomorrow you configure your endpoint to block this without taking care about our recommendation, if the attack is blocked, and that's perfectly fine. Okay? If I go back on this endpoint, there is another attack here, which is related to a Fortinet client with an SQL injection vulnerability. Okay, you could tell me, Fred, okay, I would like to dig into it. And when I dig into it, you have here this attack, okay, which is just used usually by Medusa. They were well known to attack FortiMS based on that, okay? And you have here the attack that we run, all the details related to it, and the proof that we were able to attack, because here the SQL injection works with the Python logs that we run here. How we detect that? Of course, exactly like another hacker will do, we are doing almost every time same thing, which is scanner. So if you look the services, here you will see services of everything that we detected on the server. So we have a Fortinet client, and as you can see, you see the Nmap that we are running, which is a common tool to collect OS and software which are running on a server. So we saw the Fortinet, we found an ISS, we have an OpenBSD SSH platform, we have RPC, but we have also here, a little bit below, Microsoft, we have an Apache here, and we have other tools. When we would like to collect these kind of things, and to be sure that, by example, Fortinet is working on it, what we are trying to do, we are trying to connect on the platform, and every time we are collecting a screenshot about what we are seeing. So if you take a look here on the Fortinet clients that you are seeing here, sorry, not here, here, sorry, you capture a screenshot about the console. So we are proving that behind it, they will read the Fortinet client. If I click here, I see the Vim client also, which is here. And to finish, the Windows Server IIS. Okay, that's how we are working on it to be sure that everything that we provide is proven and clear. So when I go back here, I saw all this impact, which is a big challenge. So on this specific endpoint, we have a lot of challenges to fix. Okay, if I go back to the EDR, I will use one of them, which is this one, where we have a better view. If I take a look in it, okay, here you could see that few things has been permitted, of course, that's bad, but few things like lateral movements that we run has been denied by the endpoint, which is a good overview about what we are doing. Okay, there is improvement, but at least it's not as the other endpoint, which was on the server, where we were able almost to do anything that we wish. If I continue on this, what is super important here on the EDR side, of course, you are able to export all this data in one simple bucket, which will be a CSV file that you are able to export, and you have the full view here. Okay, that's an example of the ones that we already collected. Another thing which is quite relevant, and we didn't discuss about it, that we provide here all the kind of vulnerabilities that you could have, and we try to exploit them. Based on that, we need to have a kind of threat intel in our platform. This threat intel is available through what we call the rapid response. Rapid response is all the CVE that we are able to exploit, and we will try to exploit on your network. Of course, it's coming from the public knowledge base that everybody is using, but we have also our own one, and I will show you this one, which is quite important from my point of view, which is Netscaler, which it was during the summer where our threat intel team disclosed the zero-day attack on Netscaler load balancer from Citrix. We disclosed this zero-day attack on the 11th of July to the vendors. It took more than a month to the vendors to do an advisory about it, which makes us have a public exploit available in our tool on the 26th. All the customers who are under NDA with us enjoy it at the 11th of July. And that's how we were able to fix it. Another thing that I would like to show to you is Tripwire. He spoke about it. That's a kind of honeypot that you are able to deploy on multiple servers, where you will be able, by example, to deploy an honeypot on a server that you are not able to patch or even to deploy an EDR. You are not able to touch to it, so you will deploy just an honeypot on a token, and if someone touch it, it will ring an alert here. To finish this demo, I would like to highlight also what we call the insight, where you will have a security trend about all the pen tests that you are running. Again, we are not limited on the number of pen tests that you are able to run. If you would like to run 10 pen tests a day, you are free to do it, okay? And we run already more than 180,000 pen tests without any incidents. And here you have the full trend. On top of it, on the bottom of it, sorry, you have a view about what we call the systemic issue, where what is the challenge that you've got that you didn't fix yet, and the ones that you have and fix. And sometimes you could have something which is not relevant, means that you have an issue, okay? And this issue reappear after a certain amount of time. That's it for this demo. I would like to thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks for that demo. So something I just wanted to point out is the platform, which, well, the platform is not quite Zoom, right? So we are getting a little bit of blurriness on the screen. That's not the product, obviously. It's the resolution from this platform for the webinar. So it's just a blurry platform, but it's very crisp in real life, and you're welcome to come try it. I want to hit questions just to make sure we cover them. Quite a lot of questions. Thank you for them. I'll take them in no particular order, and Fred, I'll shout at you for ones. So I can only see questions from number 3, which was, can we get the recording? Of course, we will issue that out. Everyone on this call will get the recording. I spotted a question I quite liked, which was the question around from Alexander, which is a good one. You said normal setup to an attack from your own VM. No, you set up on your VM inside your network, but of course we can do external surface as well. And the OVA file is simply so that you can do either white box, black box, or gray box testing with or without credentials, assume breach. I think the point that we didn't get across in the Prezzo yet is we hear you that an employee has been phished, and that is often from their computer then the start point. We absolutely agree. When you set up your penetration test yourself, you can use multiple scenarios to say phishing, test, assume breach, ransomware, check for sensitive data, check for high value data, data pilfering. There are many scenarios you test for. The point is simply that OVA file is a point of presence for you to begin your test from. It's not scripted, and it's not just running from there. It is next best decision making, and it will run phishing, and in fact has integrations with testing tooling such as KnowBe4 and others. So multiple scenarios. We're just keeping it simple on this call. So I hope that answers the question, that first bit of the question. By all means, follow up. By the way, something for all of you, if you wish, is that you can book a follow-up meeting on the engagement tools. If you scroll on the right-hand side of your screen and do an EDR test yourself with our help, or of course, just have a meeting to ask further questions. Another question as they go. So NCC, a few of my clients use NCC as their SIEM provider. Yes, we can complement that setup. NCC are a global partner of ours, and they actually are building us into, we're already part of their pen test service, but they're also building a continuous managed service around us. And we absolutely integrate with SIEM tooling and so forth. Simple again for this call, but we have something called an MCP server, which allows API-less integration into multiple third-party tools. Another question. I have heard that on-demand HTTP, also web app testing, is in the roadmap. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's very shortly available. Fred, you may have the date for that, but it's absolutely shortly available.
Yeah, it should be Q1.
Yeah. Thank you. So go ahead, Fred.
Yes, you asked a question about the passwords that I replied to in the chat, but one thing which is important, we are not providing the clear password anywhere else. Okay, we are not an attack tool. If someone would like to test and verify if this challenge has been fixed, we have the function which is one click and verify, which allow you to test if the password has been changed, or if, I don't know, multi-factor authentication has been set up to fix these challenges.
We will, of course, do credential checking for you, so we will try to crack your passwords. Those passwords are not clear text extracted from your org. By default, we hash out a chunk of that password, although it's available for privileged users to see. It does not leave your organization, so we'll show you what's crackable, where it needs to be changed. So we will do credential checks should you choose to do so. As I was asking a number of questions. So how is our tool licensed? We do it by asset. So that was because of things like Kubernetes environments. So group together assets, and we charge by asset, which is kind of by endpoint. And you can talk to us for costs for sure after the call, but we have three main bundles, which are Core, Pro, and Elite. And those have various different things built into them, which we can talk about, but it's licensed annually per asset, and it is SaaS based. So I hope that answers the question. Let's also look here. We managed the password question we answered. There's a couple of questions on IoT, OT environments. So good. So listen, we think that pretty much everything starts with shell on a host, right? So shell on a host for us is the focus. So we work and we have clients, critical national infrastructure clients in the utilities space or processing space that are very OT heavy. It's not been traditional focus for us, but we operate in several of those environments very successfully, and we can talk about that in a follow-up meeting. But CNI, OT heavy environments, we have a number of referenceable customers that that we can talk about. What else have we not done here? Passwords we've done. Alexander, we've answered you on the VM. We agree it's multiple ways of testing. We've just kept it simple. Web apps we've covered. NCC we've covered. Any other questions for anybody? Chat in the Q&A box as we come up to time. License model kind of just answered, so I hope that makes sense. And I would urge you again, down at the bottom, engagement tool, follow-up questions. You want to see a personalized demo for you, or indeed you want to do an EDR health check, or you just want a wider autonomous penetration testing solution, let me know. There was a question from somebody that kind of feels to me as if they're coming from a red team perspective, which was, you know, can we use it for, as per some traditional manual pen testing tools, such as Ping Castle and Purple Knight? Yeah, by all means, you can continue to use those. We typically augment red teams, so we're faster, much faster coverage, much deeper, if I may say so. And what tends to happen is we allow that red team then to continue to use manual tools should they wish to be a scalpel for specific issues, especially application layer, versus what we're finding without the need for human intervention, although you can tune the setup, tune the testing perspective as you go. We have over 100 different tools, as well as obviously our own AI-based decision-making and attack content within Node Zero. So there's a lot of capability that is autonomously then used during our testing. So I trust that makes sense, Azhar. Does the trial include all the features you've discussed, Azhar? Yes, it does, much to my distress. So while I'd love a cut down version, the trial does include the features, and we trust you that you're going to use it and test it and look at the capabilities and see if it's relevant to you, as opposed to just run amok with it and never buy it. But it is time limited, and it is very powerful. How do you deal with an external SOC? We've got many, it's a good question. We've got many customers and service providers. So a big part of our business is managed security service providers, because we're multi-tenanted. And what happens is that they wrap our capability as a continuous assurance or managed pen testing service. And that is integrated with an external SOC, and we're integrated with via MCP server or default API integration with many. And but I don't know a customer that doesn't have SOC integration, whether internal or in some cases external. Fred, I don't know if you want to build that out at all.
Yes, what I reply in the question and answer. So what I would like to say here is that for me, it's a good manner to test your MSSP partner or MDR partner to check if they are able to alert you that you are under attack. Of course, in the worst situation, if you prefer to inform them, that's always good to do it. But from my point of view, I prefer when they are not aware like this. It will help you to measure if what they are doing and inform you will be relevant, and you have the money that you spend for the services that you would like to buy.
I like that. So just to come back to that answer, I think there was two perspectives here. One is, does what we do integrate with a SOC? And yes, there are SOC integrations in terms of SIEM tooling. The other answer that Fred's just given is we often advise you don't tell your SOC that you're using, that you've deployed and you're running a test this week or this month, because you want to test what the SOC picks up. So we got some major bank customers, exactly what they do, because you then want to sit your SOC down and your EDR head and your threat head and so forth and say, why did you not detect this? What else do we need to tune? Where or how do we improve our logging and so forth? Something else that we say about our output is, and again, it's your output, it stays in your environment, is it's really ultimate threat intel, because it's within the context of your production environment and it's focused on exploitability. So it's not irrelevant threat intel, and it's mapped to threat actors, and it's mapped to business impact. So you can feed that into other tooling for sure, as many customers do. Any other questions? Does the VM with Node 0 need internet access, or would it be possible to da 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 da? Yeah, I hear you there. So yes, we are a SaaS-based solution. So although we're in some really, really sensitive environments, and there's ways to do that, then we are not designed to be an offline, on-prem only tooling, because the logic, the brain, and so on and so forth is something that obviously we need to connect to. So it is not designed for offline. Although, as I say, it is deployed in some pretty demanding environments where the way that's been set up is done in a way that mitigates any risk that's perceived. Anything else? All right, I think we've got there. I hope that was really, really useful as we come up to time. Somebody else saying something?
Yeah, there is a question in the chat, not in the question and answer. Are we collaborating with EDR vendors as part of this health check features? The answer is yes, we are working with few vendors about what we are able to test and what we are able to highlight. But the goal is also for them to be sure that they're protecting you well about it. But we are partnership with the biggest player on this endpoint side.
So, for example, guys, I was at CrowdStrike Falcon. I did a speech at CrowdStrike Falcon, and while CrowdStrike, very comprehensive platform, for example, have got some capabilities in exposure management, again, very different to an active exploit-focused autonomous capability like this, where we are validating your existing tooling and your defensive setup and your processes. So yes, we work with, and we will validate and tune and strengthen those EDR deployments. And yeah, we have a good relationship with CrowdStrike. Obviously, many of us SentinelOne, we have a good relationship there also, and can help tune those setups as we do. All right, we've got 1 minute to go. Thank you to those. I know a few people have dropped. We had I think 100 people on at one point, dropped to 90. A few people dropping off for the Q&A. Loved the interaction. Thank you very much, and would encourage you to book a follow-up, book a meeting, gain access to free trial, gain access to an EDR health check. Love to help you, even if it's just to validate your existing deployment. Go read about us. We've won a lot of awards. We've got over 4,000 customers, and we've done more pen tests than the Big Four combined. So we know what we're doing. And with that, I will close. Thank you.
Thank you very much.